listen to Vladimir.
Yeah, hello.
He's
hello.
from Bolt and knows quite a lot of English words.
Yeah, so thank you very much for not leaving after pizza. Let's start with a quick picture. So imagine an SRE comes to a CTO, says, hello, have you ever seen a microservice going down? Yeah, sure. How about 3 microservices down at the same time? Well, probably. Have you seen 1,000 microservices go down at the same time? Definitely not. Well, go check out our production. So yeah, today we're talking about Frugal Software Architecture, which will probably save you from not having 1,000 microservices down in prod. My name is Vladimir Ivanov. Bolt is allowing me to work there as a senior engineering manager for almost 2 years already. But actually doing software architecture for like 6 or 7 years, and I write about it a lot. The link you can see here, my personal blog, DEVCLUB.EE. Don't worry, all the links will be at the end of the slides. So let's start with a guessing game. Who recognizes the plot? Anybody? Again? No, actually, this is Erebor, half a year Erebor, right? So it's like okay. Now you can see happy faces of mortgage holders, right? So yeah, mortgage is like playing Monopoly game, but the banks always win, and the jail is real. But yeah, what this graphic is telling us is that money is not free anymore, right? So the percentage of European bank, and the same happening in the US, it's far from 0 now. So you cannot just raise 10 million out of a PowerPoint desk. Mental, right? Okay, another plot. Does anybody know what this is about? This is company layoffs, so this is from layoffs FYI. And you can see that people from crypto, from media, from transportation got laid off. Like almost 500,000 people lost their job in IT. And this is what happens when you have huge Kubernetes clusters, but very few developers that can write code for this. So you hire, because you have free money, right? And then you have to fire them, because the money are not free anymore, the market changed, pandemic happened, war in Ukraine happened, another war in Israel happened, and now you don't have jobs for all those people anymore. And you know, this is not fun. Like, people overhire. Of course, one of the reasons is competition for the talent. You're just hiring people for your competitor, not to hire the person. But still, this is what companies used to do, and not doing this anymore. So they're more frugal about their hiring policies. And another reason is that, like, aside from these macroeconomic situations, is that actually our solutions are very big and require a lot of people, but if you think about it twice, not so much. The recent example is Twitter being acquired for Elon Musk. What he essentially did, he just fired 80% of the people, and Twitter is still operating. Like, nobody is noticing anything. At least my 7.5 followers didn't notice any outages. So yeah, looks like we can do the same thing, but on a much smaller amount of developers, and we can have more frugal architectures which are more efficient. And this is what my talk is about. But I'm saying architectural, the stuff. What's architecture in the first place? So I'm not very smart, but I occasionally read smart books. One of those is Software Architecture in Practice, 3rd edition. This is a great book, especially if you have troubles with sleep. Or if you want to feel like Neo, like, this book is the way, 5 minutes and you're battling Morpheus. So according to this book, architecture is a set of structures consisting of components and their connections, as well as properties of letter and forma, about the system properties to reason about. Does anybody understand anything? Not me either. So I have a better definition. So actually, you can define architecture as a set of very expensive decisions. Not as expensive as a boat ride in the rain in Tallinn. 100 euro for 20 minutes ride. But, you know, profitability is not going to make itself happen. So, yeah. But still, architecture is a set of expensive decisions. And sometimes it's billions of dollars expensive, right? So this graph shows you that Uber, for the last 9 years, built up like a walloping 30 billions in operational debt. And only recently, this year, they showed some operational profit, like first time in 9 years. So they're kind of trying to catch up. And yeah, of course, they're hiring a lot, the salaries are very high, but the solutions are overblown and they are not very operationally efficient. And this is a problem, we need to fight this. And it's not only, you know, startups or anything, it's like everywhere. Even in desktop apps, so for example, like 15 years ago, if you check out the iTunes application on the MacBook, then you will see that it consumes 30% of CPU, half a gig of memory, and if you compare it to Winamp on Windows, it's like, I don't know, 6 times less efficient than it can probably be doing the same thing, playing music, right? Mental again. And on mobile, same story, like if you open up just a storage on a brand new phone, just Pixel, like 6 gigabytes just goes to the operating systems. What are they doing there? Hosting an entire ChatGPT model or what? Like you can do the same thing with a $15 Raspberry Pi. Why do we need all of this? I don't know. By the way, this is an example from Nikitonsky's blog. His post about software disenchantment. I highly recommend to read and scare yourself about like what we're doing as an industry. So yeah, my answer to all those problems is let's think about how we can pick up the architecture which is actually frugal. So it's cost efficient, doing the thing with the least amount of resources. Okay, and frugality is not just, cost savings. It's about doing more with less, or maximizing the impact on unit of change. So whatever you do, you need to understand that it brings the most impact that you can put the effort in. So this is not a mere cost saving, but you actually balance this cost efficiency, cost savings with situations when you can make a strategic investment, put a relatively big amount of money and effort in the thing that will have a big impact. Okay. Why it's significant for both? Because like ride-hailing, as we saw with Uber, is a low profit margin business, right? So it's like from 7 to 10%. It's not your fancy SaaS with like 60% of profitability. No, it's like 10% max. That actually means that if you can optimize the bottom line by just 1%, it means that you can grow the profit by 10%. So this is a huge impact, like right? 10x. This is very good, and this is what we aim at. Okay, a couple of examples. Like I said, strategic investments and cost efficiency. Strategic investments first. Several examples to show what I'm talking about. So first example is the migration to Kubernetes. At Bolt, we have all the backend services we used to have running on EC2 machines. So at the inception of Bolt, it was efficient, but not anymore. So we're over-provisioning the resources. It is not flexible. The problem with delivery, when we have spikes, it's very hard to scale. It requires a lot of effort from engineers, so not efficient. So what we decided to do as a company is to migrate from EC2 to Kubernetes. And that was a huge success. So like one team spent like half a year of their time, but eventually the cost saving just for the systems that I oversee was like 40%, right? And the cost is a big amount of what we're doing. So if we optimize it very well, then this is a profit for the company.
Yeah, excuse me, EC2 is Amazon, yes?
Yep. So just virtual machines, okay? So
also
yeah, we're running them on top, But yeah, like this is different technology, so we're able to do that much more cost efficiently. We're doing Kubernetes ourselves. Like I'm not an expert, but I just consulted our.
Use Amazon machines.
Yeah. Still AWS. We're an AWS shop. Okay. Yeah, and actually we improved reliability and scalability, so that's much more flexible. We plan much less effort into testing for the New Year and Christmas, and this is like the hottest time in the year. So yeah, this is a huge improvement. Another strategic investment that is not executed yet, but planned, just to show how we do those things, is the investment in the reliability. So right now, we see that the downtime cost for us, just downtime, is 200% of GMV. And this can look small, but GMV, or revenue.
What is that? What is GMV?
Yeah. I'm explaining. So GMV is generated market value. So for example, if you're just selling software, you can operate with just profit because you have high profit margin and so on and so on. But for Uber or Bolt, the majority of the money, like the vast majority of the money that we're dealing with is just go through, right? So we just take the money from the rider, give it to the driver, and put some commission to ourselves, okay? So we're not operating in profit terms, but we're operating in the market value, okay? And this is like essential, the key metric for us. So yeah, and we measure almost everything in either percentages of the GMV or like direct cost or amount of money. So yeah, what we want to do is to get it down 4 times fold. We estimate it to cost like 10 man week, but we actually see that if you compare those two numbers, then we have a very high return on investment, like more than 5 times. And this is a good example of the strategic investment, so it is easy to explain to higher management why we're doing this exactly and not anything else, because it has high return on investment impact, so we're doing this. And this is how we make decisions, okay? Yeah, invest in the reliability. Yeah, another examples, not from us, but from Uber. This is how you're migrating containers to cloud. Yeah, so, okay. There's a two-part series of articles on the Pragmatic Engineer newsletter, where they explain and cover how Uber transitions from data centers to cloud. And they used to have 3 data centers in different parts of the US, but they essentially transitions to GCP, I think. So the reasons for that, I don't have the monetary values because they're not public, unfortunately. But what was the problems for them is that they had regular issues with hard drives, and they had to have their own employee serving the data centers and so on and so on. They had the impact from the pandemic and the impact from chip shortage. So they couldn't grow their compute capacity to the growth of their business, so they were kind of limited and they decided to transition. And another thing was that some of the companies that they acquired were not running in data centers themselves, they were running in cloud. So they essentially gathered together and decided okay, it's time to transition to cloud because it makes sense strategically, right? So again, I don't have the numbers, but again, strategic investment. Okay, so the lesson 1 is that whatever you do, you need to actually calculate why you're doing this in the first place. What impact it will be either in the costs or in future profit or in other terms, right? So basically you estimate this impact in projected profit or market share, like percentage of GMV, or a compliance cost. So for example, you need to implement the invoices properly, otherwise the authorities will come to you and will fine you €300 per invoice, which is 10 times fold the price of the right, okay? So then you estimate your high level effort. This is a separate topic, but you need to understand if it's 1 man week, 10 man weeks, or 100 man weeks, right? Because it will impact the ROI. And if you know the ROI, then you can prioritize all your initiatives and pick up the most impactful ones. So yeah, do this please, because this is more conscious way to improve your products. Okay, another example I want to talk about is like a negative one is this infrastructure. And you know there's a book called Infrastructure as Code, and those books are interesting. It's like reading a book about infrastructure as code is like reading a book about sex. Probably you will learn a couple of tricks, but you better practice, right? And much more enjoyable. So infrastructure as code, like literally on the first page, they recommend that you need to go IAC day one. And the reasons why they're doing this is like, imagine you have a new feature, a new application that requires a new database, or you need to upgrade your servers, or you found out about the security vulnerability and you need to update the packages. Well, sounds like bullshit to me, right? None of those reasons actually exist in the product from day one, right? Your typical architecture is probably a serverless function, a cloud-based database, and everything is pretty much managed for you if you're doing things right. Because you don't know your product market fit, you don't know if this is the right product to do in the first place. Like, why do you need to invest in this? So I'm consulting a startup. They're at the pre-seed phase. But they have already some traction with the customers. They have some products. They're trying to sell it and getting some investments at the same time. What they have at the moment is like 2 Lambdas in AWS. They have 2 S3 buckets and like 3 DynamoDB tables. And probably 20 environment variables for those 2 Lambdas. Manual labor of provisioning, just clicking this in the AWS console, is like 4 hours with debugging the issues along the side. How frequently do you think for the last year they did a new environment provision? Twice. Twice is the right answer. However, if you get an engineer and try to teach him AWS CDK, how to provision like several resources that we figured out, they will probably spend like 3 to 5 days. And this is like 40 hours of work while you can deploy a couple of features or a new product in a week of time. So if you calculate the return on investment for this, it will be highly negative. So not stonks. Doesn't make sense to go with infrastructure as code from day one. It doesn't make any economical sense. So don't invest your valuable time into the things that don't bring any value right away. Okay, so we spoke about a little bit the strategic investments. Let's talk about cost optimizations. And to talk about this, we need to understand the cost drivers, right? Like what contributes to the cost of our products. And there are multiple things like hardware and infrastructure. We covered that already. Development costs, of course, especially for software products. This is like the majority of the cost you have. Then maintenance and support, software licensing if you have any, training cost if you need to teach people how to use your software, security, and compliance. I will touch a couple of points from this list, will not go through all of them, okay? Because it's like late already and I want to sleep. Okay, let's talk hardware and infrastructure. Another example, Basecamp migration to DCS. Does anybody know, who knows Basecamp? Hey.com, Basecamp, Campfire, right? Similar products. Maybe you know this guy, DHH. He likes to take very questionable takes in Twitter and LinkedIn. So yeah, how much money do you think they spent in 2022 on cloud infrastructure? No. That's pretty much a huge number for them. How much? Well, it's actually 3 million. That's an enormous amount of money, right? What they did, they actually calculated that with a capital investment of $600,000 with 5 years amortization, so they will spend this, like they're spending this money right now, but they need to amortize or replace the servers just in 5 years, so they can spend only like $120,000 each year. So with this capital investment, they can actually migrate all of their data and compute to data centers. And it takes like half a year project for several developers. And return on investment is huge. So they're going to save 7 million over 5 years. And for the small company that Basecamp is, this is a huge amount of money. So this is, again, a strategic investment, but actually driven by the cost driver of hardware and infrastructure, right? And that makes perfect sense for them because they know their business very well. They know the structure of their costs. They know their products. They know how much money they spend, and they see a clear opportunity to save all those money. So yeah, somebody is purchasing a Bugatti in 5 years. Unfortunately, not me. Okay, let's talk about development costs. So again, this is the biggest thing in our software products. What I want to say is that invest in developer productivity. One of the examples that I have, like not on the slides, but actually in Bolts, we have a lot of code generated. So again, at the inception of the Bolt, our CTO invested highly into the code generation. We have this TypeScript, Node.js services talking to each other. So for example, every time you want to call an API of other service, then you need to have client code, you need to have models, and so on and so on. So basically, instead of doing this all manually, we have some tools that will generate the client for us. It will generate the appropriate models, will include the authorization and all that stuff for us. And actually, what we have right now is that half of the code in our backend repo is generated, right? So this 100% improvement in productivity, and it was done at the beginning of the company, so it's probably saved us a lot of time, like hundreds of thousands of developer hours. And this is a good thing to speak about developer productivity, because like as this is the majority of your cost, you need to make sure that your developers is working efficiently. I don't know if extreme programming helps with that, like we're not practicing, and I had very hard time convincing some of my team members to try it, because they had negative experience in the past, but that's my experience. So try for yourself, see if it's more productive or maybe less productive, but please measure this, okay? And when we speak about developer productivity, I'm talking about all the tools that you can imagine right now. So for example, CI/CD pipeline actually makes a lot of sense from day one, because if you imagine like deploying the lambdas, even manually, this is like a huge pain, right? You need to compile all the stuff, make a zip make a zip archive, then upload it, then wait for the deployment, and so on and so on. So right now, again, giving this example of the startup that I'm consulting, so I advise to have this CI/CD pipeline from day one. They have GitHub Actions, and like the Lambda deployment is automated. So you only need to commit the code. Everything else can be done automatically, so the people continue developing features. So yeah, this is a must. Another thing is please use static code analysis, because like everybody is a human, we make mistakes, we make typos. So if you have a linter or whatever tool you use for your programming language, please use it. It saves a lot of time. Even if you have just IntelliJ idea that's highlighting that something is wrong, it indeed saves a lot of development time. And of course, quality control, right? So you cannot add the quality as a last part of your CI/CD pipeline or your product lifecycle. You need to have quality built in. And actually, you may have heard about this dilemma between like, do we want to write unit tests or do we want to go fast? It's actually a wrong dichotomy, right? So you need to do both. Then you have quality, don't spend time on the bugs, you're going faster. So do both of those things together. So yeah, what this startup has, again, backend unit tests for happy cases, some of them for error handling, but none of them for UI, because UI and customer-facing products is evolving. And it doesn't make sense because they can like redo several pages in one go, and like unit tests, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, in both we use a lot of unit testing as well. For example, in the entire commerce development I work for, we don't have manual quality assurance at all. We have unit tests, we have component tests, we have e-component tests, end-to-end tests. And yeah, we rely heavily on them, and we're doing fine with this. Okay, another thing about the development cost is the iterative improvement. Frequently, people try to do like different things. So some of those, they say, hey, let's do software architecture planned for the several years in advance, right? So they write design documents, they spend 3 months on that, not shipping any value, not getting the feedback from the market. Other people saying like, hey, we don't need architecture at all, we're doing agile, right? Because agile and planning, like they don't live together. So both are fallacies, right? So you kind of don't want to have like fully blown architecture from day one, but you want to have some architecture, right? You need to have some high-level idea what you're doing in the first place, what are rough components your solution will consist of, because like you need some expertise from the developers, and you need to understand if you need a mobile developer, front-end developer, back-end developer, like how you're going to treat the infrastructure and so on. So with iterative development, you kind of draft some architecture, then you start developing something. You see if it like fits the bigger picture, change the architecture on the way. So do it in iterations. Another thing is that you actually want to have the minimal set of components. Like again, same example. Like you're starting a new product. You're saying, okay, I'm going to go serverless because this is cost efficient. Yeah, that's true. But then you say, hey, do I want to have a lambda-lit, like a serverless monolith, or I want to have several lambdas? And then probably I want to separate the concerns, and so you go several lambdas. But then very fast you find out that you actually need to share the libraries. You need to share the domain definitions. Yes, of course, Lambda has these layers and so on, but maintaining those layers is a hassle by itself. So you better go with monolith. Actually, in my newsletter that I haven't told you about, I have a weekly newsletter about software architecture, system design, and so on. Like in a couple of recent issues, there was an article about the lambda-lit and when you want to go with lambda-lit and when you don't want to go that. So you can subscribe and find it in the recent issue. So yeah, please go with a minimal set of components because again, less cost for infrastructure and provisioning, less maintenance, less effort for sharing the important parts between the components. Okay, next one is leveraging existing solutions as much as possible. And here you can think about DDD. Who's practicing DDD? Who knows what DDD is? Okay, everybody knows, nobody's practice. It's like teenage sex. Okay, so domain-driven design actually has a good thing about this, because what they say is that in your product you can have 3 types of subdomains. You can have core subdomain, generic subdomain, and supporting subdomain. And core subdomain is actually the core of your business. This is the thing that you're doing better than anybody else. For example, for a logistics company, you understand how to get a road the most efficient way, right? But every company in the world has HR processes, right? Or payroll processes. And those are generic subdomains. Those are problems that are solved for the humanity. And for the generic subdomains, you don't want to develop any solutions on your own. You better just go and buy it, right? Same for the software development. Like if you're building a product, and you need authorization and authentication there, why would you build one by yourself? Just go buy out 0, pay like $20 a month, and have this problem solved for you. Oh yeah, and the last one is a user-centric approach. Like, and this was highlighted by a previous speaker very well. If you don't speak to your customer and to your user, you're doing the wrong product. So please speak with your customer, think about them, think what they need to have in the product in the first place. Okay, another one, security. So yeah, why invest in the security if you don't have a threat model? Very wise, like no threats, no security needed. There's a very complex trade-off here, and I have a story about that. Like 10 years ago, has anybody heard about Phonom? No. This was the application that was meant to kill WhatsApp successfully. And we failed so much that not even WhatsApp is alive right now, but actually this zombie Skype is alive as well. So we were thinking about creating an application that would be a chat app with the ability to call each other through internet and actually to call the stationary phones because they were around still those times. So, and our architect, he said, hey, I want this application to be really secure. So we introduced elliptic curve encryption, end-to-end encryption. It was the most secure messenger in the world and the least used as well. So yeah, we were paranoid, but that was absolutely a wrong call. We didn't understand our threat model, and we were investing in the security and not in the actual product market fit. So don't do that, don't repeat our mistakes. Like you need to think about the security because security is like taxes. Like if you don't manage them, they will manage you. And usually this is an IRS or other tax security service. So you need to think about the security, but don't be paranoid. Start with the simple things. Start with a threat model. Understand what is a threat to your system. What are the consequences? Like what are the fines? What are the problems that you would face in reputational phases and so on? Because if you're doing a banking application, you should be paranoid. You should hardly invest in this. But if you're doing a free museum app, why would you think about security in the first place, right? You just abandon this. So yeah, understand your threat model. And of course, don't reinvent the wheel. Like what we did again in this Phonom application, we tried to implement our own crypto primitives, right? And this is a secret for disaster, right? So yeah, it was working, but probably if we would go to a security audit, we would fail. And actually a lot of people doing the same mistake. They're trying to get their own crypto. Please don't do this. You will fail. Unless you're not a security company that specializes in those kind of things, which are really hard, then you will fail. Don't reinvent the wheel. Go with trusted solutions. Talk to the experts how you do things. Reuse the libraries. Use boring crypto. For God's sake, so yeah, don't do your security. Don't reinvent the wheel. And of course, study the most common vulnerabilities and protect against them. Actually, in my blog, again, there are several articles primarily on mobile security, but there are articles on like why you don't need to roll out your own security or how to or how to protect mobile applications and so on and so on. I help those guys like litcell.com. They're doing a lot of mobile security, and then I'm cooperating with them to write those kind of content. So you will find their security by design guide, which is useful as well. Okay, what about the technological foundations that would allow this frugal software architectures? So lightweight frameworks, right? Anything that would get you started, but not require a lot of knowledge from you, because your goal is to develop the client-facing features and not experimenting with some new fancy framework. You need to ship actually the production code. So pick up something, like if you're doing Java, pick Spring or Ktor. If you're using TypeScript, use Nest. If you're doing, I don't know, Python, use Flask, something that would get you started really fast so that you can focus on the production code. Probably, if you're doing like everything from scratch and you don't have anything in your company, like you're doing a new product or you're like free to go with a new project, probably go in serverless architecture today is a good idea, right? Because it gets you started very fast. Then you can validate the project idea, get the preliminary feedback, and if you see it doesn't scale, doesn't fit, or should be changed, you should be able to change it very fast. And yeah, again, outsource non-core functions, okay? So yeah, again, frugality in practice. So I want to share this example of the startup I consulting. So they're doing KYC and KYB. This is know your customer or know your business. This is actually required because there's a new legislation called DC7, and it actually forces all the marketplaces, which is Deliveroo or Foodie or Bolt or Uber or actually YouTube or Twitch, to validate all their suppliers, because like the people that are working for them are actually suppliers. They supply services or content. And this new legislation say that the marketplaces should validate those people so that don't avoid taxes. So yeah, greed again. So what the folks are doing is here. So this is a diagram of the product that actually already working for the customers. And this is like the least possible things that you can come up with, right? So there are just a couple of applications in web for customer and for admin. Then there's some serverless setup in cloud. So there are a couple of lambdas there. So there's a verification API lambda leads, okay, that is doing everything around the verifications. There's a second lambda, it's signed URL API. This is just to be able to upload documents securely, right? Then DynamoDB database, so no Postgres setup, no RDS, nothing. So like we don't know, the people don't know the model to the end yet. So it makes sense to have a database without a model, right? And scalable and shipped by the cloud. So no infrastructure cost at all. Document storage S3, yeah, like why do I justify S3? For the authentication or serializations, Auth0 is used, so SaaS. For API gateway, they actually picked up Cloudflare because eventually it will be more cost efficient than the solution from AWS, especially if you want to route outside the AWS. It's just like space rockets with the prices. And yeah, there are just some bunch of external APIs, especially for the crash reporting. Again, you can come up with this architecture in like no time. Like you can develop like 1, 2, 3, 4 components like 2 weeks time and already have something working, right? So this is the definition of frugal architecture. Ready components, very few amount of components, serverless, all non-essential things are delegated to other services. So yeah, this is a good idea of how you would approach a new project or new product, okay? Okay, so for future improvements for this picture, like probably async operations for verification, so we'll just pick up the SQS for this. So when the load would increase, and that will be fine, and will be a very minor change to the architecture. Probably we'll go with a multi-tenant setup, but again, with the cloud, it's very easy, no infrastructure management, nothing else. So yeah, and maybe some others. So yeah, we kind of can evolve this architecture very easily to fit the product market, whatever we discover. Okay, of course, this frugality approach can be tricky in some sense. So, for example, first is over-optimization, right? So, if you would proceed and cut cost on the essential things, for example, with this project, if you cut the cost on the security, and like in the first month of the usage, you will lose all the customers' documents, like you're out of business, right? So you need to invest a sufficient amount of money to decrease the probability of such an event. So don't over-optimize, try to calculate, make the calculated decisions and so on. And like trade-offs is pretty much the same thing, right? So you need to balance this security effort, for example, with the amount of money you spend, or like with the performance, what do you do, and so on. And yeah, maintenance, like how do you make sure that your architecture stay frugal, but this is a separate topic. This is like building evolutionary architecture functions, and all the other stuff. So yeah, conclusion. Like nowadays, in our world, in the current macroeconomic environment, like frugality is not even an option. This is a must-have. This is how would you create or grow a business nowadays. So let's adopt those principles. Weight in every decision, like make the calculated decisions, understand what is the impact of what are you doing, and ask yourself a question, should I be working on more important thing, okay? Yeah. That's it. Again, I'm Vladimir Ivanov. Here's the link to my blog, like a lot of software architecture, system design, mobile security, and general software development. If you want to speak with me, follow me on Twitter. DMs are open. There's a YouTube channel that I work on occasionally. Hopefully this record will go there as well. So there are videos on system design, database architectures, like software development, user stories, delegation, engineering management. A lot of content is already there. Please subscribe. There's a duplication of the newsletter in Telegram if you're using one. And I really hope you like this talk a lot. If you do, you can support me on Patreon. There are a couple of subscribers already here. Thank you very much for the support. Thank you very much. Yeah, you can join those great people in supporting my work. Thanks a lot. Your questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Great talk. You have a Patreon. I'm impressed.
That wasn't so hard.
What is the definition of frugal architecture? As I understand, you're trying to optimize the operation cost. Is that right?
I'm trying to optimize the overall cost of the system, both CapEx and OpEx.
All right. So what happens is you're arguing that lambdas is the way to go because you pay just for the usage, right?
Yeah.
I would question that because, first of all, how many developers do you have that work with lambdas? How easy it is to find such developers? And secondly, what happens if you get high usage, your architecture scales, but you kind of want to migrate to regular architecture?
Okay. Several questions in one, but let's try to answer them one by one. So first of all, how hard it is to find people working with Lambda? Well, Lambda is not very, rocket science thing. This is just a way to run your code, right? And they actually support containers as well. So you can have both Lambdas and containerized application. And once you have a container, you feel free to migrate to whatever you want. Docker Swarm, Kubernetes, EKS, whatever you want. So there are some specifics into the provisional concurrency in Lambda or the cold starts or other problems, but this is not the thing that you need master degrees to use, okay? So I'm not sure this is a problem in the first place. This is the first point. Second point, you asked if you observe that the volume is high. Great problem. But again, you can have your escapes. Again, if you have a containerized application, you can analyze what is the profile, load profile. And once you know load profile, you can come up with a solution that will fit this load profile. Maybe you will be fine with Lambda still. Maybe you will need to migrate to something else. But this is the point when you actually know your load profile. Before you don't know it, you don't need to optimize for anything, right? And this is my call. Don't optimize for the thing that you don't know. Okay?
Well, to the Lambda, I was arguing for the Lambda migration that the cost for migrating from Lambdas to regular stack would be so high that you would need to rewrite the code, you would need to change databases and containerize your logic if you want to migrate from AWS to other cloud, to your own cloud. So that's not really frugal, is it?
Well, first of all, it depends, okay? So you said that you need to switch database. Why would you need to do this in the first place?
So you had a dynamo. Now I know my business model. I know the schema. I want to have consistency.
Okay.
I want to introduce Postgre.
Okay.
I need to spend money on engineers migrating the actual data, setting up infrastructure. Why not do it in advance,
Because it comes with the costs, right? So to set up a database, to come up with a model, to change the model while you're developing and understanding your product, it comes with a cost as well. And my call is, okay, you can go with the database from day one, but be conscious about that, right? How sure you are about your model, what is the schema change cost? Those are migrations that you need to write with the development cost as well. So everything has a cost. Like this is not a silver bullet solution, right? Everything has a cost. What I'm saying is that analyze for your particular problem what will be more beneficial, more cost efficient in your particular situation. Maybe you're entering a highly regulated and known environment, like, I don't know, tax reporting. You will know your scheme from day one, like perfectly fine. Of course, go with the data model that you know, and you know you will work with that. If you're entering a new environment, nobody is doing anything, probably not the best choice. Okay.
Actually, I had the same question as the previous person, but from the presentation to presentation, I see the same statement that you, at the beginning, need to choose the simplest framework, make the simplest solution. But from my employee experience, I see that this simplest solution, like, still living for several years because developers cannot migrate to new solutions. It's pretty hard with really bad base, maybe like we call it simple base, to migrate to something else.
Okay. What do you mean by cannot?
For example, you had talked about around the databases. To change the schema in database,
Not really.
it's much more simpler than change the database itself.
Okay.
So I would say that at the beginning you should think a lot what's the base, what's the fundament you're making, because in the future it could be that some migrations, some product change, library change the base.
Okay.
And it can cost much more money for you because you already have some customers that
Yeah.
you cannot lose.
Yeah.
You have some employees that you can lose.
Okay.
And then you will.
Let me ask you one question. Why are you sure you have a future as a product? This is an important question. This is not a speculation, because like if you check out the statistics, like 90 or 95% of startups fail. They don't have a future in the first place. What you actually do is you try to understand if you have a future. And if you have one, well, that's great. Actually, you survived. You get some customer base. Now you have a great problem. You understand how it should have been from the day one. Now you have money, you have a company, you have resources to do that. Like, if you do that from the day one, you probably won't survive. This is first thing, one second. Another thing that I want to ask is like, why do you write code?
Can you elaborate about that?
I mean, you as a developer, you obviously receive a salary, but like, what is the reason for the code to exist?
So, asking the first question, what if you predict is that your product will not survive in high probability, then like why you even start?
Well, you believe you will succeed,
Exactly.
but like most everybody fail, and you need to account for that.
If you believe that you succeed, even with a more simple solution, why not believe you succeed with a complex solution, a bit more complex?
Because it costs money, and money are not free, as we figured out at the like second slide.
Anymore.
Yeah. So it's not only your belief, right? It's the belief of people with money, which you should convince. And you have a limited budget, and you need to do something with this. You can either go with a perfect design from day one, or you can go with product features that will bring customers, bring money, and allow you to live. And this is the harsh reality we're in right now. Like, we cannot just go and say like, hey, we have, I don't know, $100 million. We can go Kubernetes cluster from day one. Actually, in one of the recent examples, there was a story of a co-founder, and they had this similar story, right? So, hey, I wanted to have some proper architecture. I picked up Kubernetes. 12 months later, they closed. probably you shouldn't have done this, right? You probably should have invested money in something else. So yeah, I understand that like we as engineers, we want to have beautiful solutions. We have the solutions with the reliability, with the future that we should not rewrite like every couple of years, but the reality is different. We as developers should think about business and our customers and how to solve problems with technical solutions. And if it is not required, then we should not do this. We should be more conscious. This is the way to success.
The second question, why write code as an employee, as a developer, or at school?
As an employee of a company.
I solve the client issues.
Exactly. So you're refactoring to the database. Does it solve a client issue?
It could solve. Like if you cannot extend the database, where you will keep the data?
Okay. Then you have a monetary value to your problem, right? So if you don't expand the database, you don't earn another $1 million. Can you spend like 100,000 of that $1 million to the expansion? Probably are. If you don't, you have a crappy business.
And the topic regarding the outsourcing.
Okay.
Really simple example. The company called Zapier is, most of the people know Zapier. So it's kind of...
I don't think everybody knows, but this is an automation solution that allows you to...
Rock band.
Zapier, okay.
Cloud-based cron jobs that you can start.
Okay.
So really simple solution that you can use, like from the day one, even the business person can use. But the cost is so high that like running one pod with a cron job will be like, I don't know, $2 per month with comparing to Zapier. So outsourcing is not really a good way if you don't plan it well.
Probably. But this is exactly my point. Plan well. Understand what you're paying for.
So it's not about the core. It's outsource. You outsource, for example, Zapier, which actually is useful if you know how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You know that half of the financials in the world work out of Excel. So yeah, probably you can make a lot with the very basic tools, and you don't need like a lot of software development for this. Yeah, absolutely, you can do this. I also encourage you to do this. If you can build a product on mere Excel, go for it. Then when you discover that that's not enough, you will have some money to hire a product team and to build a product. But yeah, like building on Excel is very frugal. Yeah.
You showed DHH migrating infrastructure back to his own cloud.
It's not his own cloud, it's just data center.
Okay, his own data center. And at the same time, you were showing that frugal architecture is start like in AWS.
Yeah.
Doesn't that like contradict?
No contradictions. DHH knows his business very well. They're not a startup anymore. They're like 15 years already, right? They have good revenue. They understand what they're doing. They understand their needs. They don't need all this blown up cloud cost. So that's perfectly fine. But when you don't know your business, you don't know what you should be paying for, like investing $500,000 in business, find and show me an investor that will allow this.
Why would I need to invest so much money? I just buy one server, I develop my app there, and then I scale up when I see revenue.
Okay, if you can calculate it and base it, go for it. But probably, you will have very few people. And not all of those people, or barely anyone, will know how to run a machine and make it reliable enough, and so on and so on. If you do, of course, sure, go ahead. But not all the founders know how to do that or have skills to do that. So they leverage the skills they know.
How did Bolt start?
Bolt starts?
I mean, in terms of infrastructure.
They went AWS right from the get-go, but they picked EC2 as, as a compute. They basically start with EC2, S3, and some TypeScript, like JavaScript services probably at that time. And native Android application, as far as I remember. It was like 2014 maybe.
It was Kutsu, Taxo.
Yeah, there was Taxify and then...
Yeah, Taxify was second.
Okay. So yeah, like pretty frugal to me as well. Okay, anything else? No, great. You're a great public. Thank you very much.